Hey, what's up guys, it's Bakes here and thank you for joining me for today's video, which is going to be my first ever channel Q&A. I said that I'd be doing a Q&A to celebrate hitting the 500 subscriber count here on my channel. So before we go any further and get into questions and things like that, let me just say again thank you to everyone who has subscribed to my channel, and not just that, but shown my channel support over the handful of years that I've been doing YouTube. Like, it really is crazy to think about, like 500 subscribers, and all I really am doing is just sitting in front of a camera talking about horror movies because, that's something I'm passionate about and love doing. And it's really cool to think that we've made this small community and I get to interact with you guys and talk about horror movies and things like that. So it really is humbling, but thank you again for helping me get to 500 subscribers, and I don't have any intent on slowing down anytime soon. So thank you for that, guys. But a little while leading up to this 500 subscriber count, I did let you guys know that for that 500 subscriber mark, I wanted to do a Q&A. So for a little while now, I've been collecting your comments over not just YouTube, but other socials that I'm doing horror stuff on. And to be perfectly honest, I don't have that many questions that were submitted, which is perfectly fine. But the ones that I have collected, we'll be answering them today, and I'll make sure I put chapters in the time bar below so you can skip through the questions and whatever. And like I said, there really isn't that much to go through, but I'll try and bulk up the video by maybe adding a little bit of fat just to break down the questions a little bit more if I feel like it's necessary. But again, at the end of the day, guys, thank you so much for 500 subscribers. This intro doesn't really need to go much longer, so let's get into the Q&A now, starting off with the first question. Okay, so getting into the first question, top 5 horror villains of all time. This is something that I've briefly discussed a handful of times on and off throughout my time on YouTube, so maybe this list might not be too surprising to people, but getting into my top 5, and it's kind of in no particular order, but I am going to start with the two frontrunners because I feel like without these two horror villains, I just wouldn't be as big of a horror fan as what I am, because these two are just so iconic to me. So number 1, again, it's in no particular order, but I'll start with Chucky from the Child's Play franchise. Just something about a killer doll has always appealed to me from a very young age. Even before I watched the Child's Play movies, I remember that far back, I still knew who Chucky was and he creeped me out. But once I eventually did get around to watching those movies again at a very young age, just how much personality and quirk he had, and it's just something that stuck with me to the age that I am now. So Chucky, again, clear front runner, but right up there with him is Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street. Just the idea of this boogeyman that can invade your dreams, and because he is in a dream landscape, can pretty much do whatever he wants. And the same thing, the people are in their dreams as well, so they can try and combat him however they want in their dreams. It's just something that I've always found to be very, very cool. And again, even before watching Nightmare on Elm Street at a very young age, I just knew who Freddy Krueger was. But I think the two things that these characters have in common as being two of the front runners here is they both have so much personality, and that's something that is clear to see with the rest of my list. But at number 3, again, no particular order, but number 3, I've got Jason Voorhees. Just out of the big body, no dialogue, slow types, think Michael Myers, Leatherface, along with Jason. But Jason Voorhees has always been my favorite of that lot. Just I think the number of actors that have depicted Jason is cool. Every movie, even though it's sort of the same character, you're following a different kind of build. He's also had a lot of different looks, whether it's the hockey mask, sackhead Jason, he's been unmasked a few times, things like that. And also just he has a lot more diversity with his kills. He's got bow and arrows, he's got his machete, of course, you name it, Jason's done it. So yeah, he's in my top 5 as well. Going with a little bit more of a niche one here, but I'm going to go with Pennywise, just because I think it's really cool that we have two now very iconic depictions of Pennywise. We have Tim Curry and Bill Skarsgård. I'd probably give the edge slightly to Tim Curry. I just feel like his interactions in that original It movie are just a little bit more iconic, but again, just so many cool moments of dialogue and interactions that he has with the characters in that movie. So Pennywise, again, has always been one that I've always gravitated to. And then rounding out my top 5, I actually can't believe that I ended up going with this character, considering on the grand scheme of things, this character is so new, but I'm going with Art the Clown. Again, like I've shown, I like horror villains with a lot of personality, and the fact that Art the Clown is mute, like he doesn't speak, yet he conveys so much personality, and that goes down to David Howard Thornton, I believe that's his name, who plays Art the Clown. You know, just no dialogue, but just his body language and the way that he interacts with the world and characters around him. He's just won me over on, like, as I said, in a world where, on the grand scheme of things, Art the Clown hasn't been around for a very long time. He's in my top 5. Like, I just love watching him on screen. It's so magnetic. Now, to add to this question, because again, on the grand scheme of things, this isn't a massive Q&A, I also felt like going with, like, 5 underrated horror villains that I really like, that I don't think a lot of people would probably choose to be in their top 5. So even though they technically didn't make it, like, these are characters that are, like, maybe not in franchises, or at least not in franchises that are as big as some of the ones that I mentioned here. So the first one that I have here is Brundlefly, specifically from the David Cronenberg remake of The Fly. And again, a lot of people will debate, is he actually a villain in that movie? And he kind of is, like, as much as the story is tragic, and that's something that I really like about his character. At the end of the movie, he's trying to drag her into the pods as well and turn her into a monster along with him. So that's pretty villainous. But yeah, again, just the tragedy that is attached to Brundlefly. And I'm a massive fan of body horror, so it just sort of goes hand in hand there. I have the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers, another really underrated one. I just like the balance of being like a serial killer, but then also something animalistic and demonic and things like that. And those first 2 Jeepers Creepers movies are so much fun, but I think the actor who plays the Creeper, I'm blanking on his name, he just smashes it out of the park, like really underrated in that role. Next up I have Candyman, again, fair enough, established franchise, but I just think Candyman is so fucking cool. Like, he just has this aura and like this just atmosphere around him that I just find to be really, really cool. And definitely, like, regardless of what you think of, like, some of the sequels, for example, like, watching Tony Todd as Candyman is always, like, electric, so I love that. Real niche one here, I have May from the movie May. Movies that appeal to me are just ones where the villain is this quirky, misunderstood weird girl, and I feel like May is the pinnacle of that, so I'm going to keep that one short and sharp. And then the last one for my underrated 5, I'm going to go with The Blob, specifically probably from the remake of The Blob, just because, if you know, that's one of my all-time favourite horror movies, and whenever I say that to people who I guess aren't horror fans, they always go, oh, The Blob, like, that's not that cool. But just this, like, I think it's like a really underrated monster, like just this thing that rolls around, it's like almost unstoppable. Again, I'm a massive body horror fan, so like the absorption scenes and, you know, breaking mass down, like, oh, I love it. So that's the first question there. Actually probably went a little longer than what I thought, but top 5 horror villains of all time, and a few underrated ones as well. Alright, so getting into the next question, and just keep in mind, guys, a lot of these comments and questions that you guys sent me, I'm sort of paraphrasing what it says just so it's easier for me to spit out here, but horror movie or not, a movie that scared or stuck with me well after watching it. Okay, so when I got this question, immediately I thought, okay, I got to remove older films that I have nostalgia with, because again, I grew up watching horror movies from a very young age, and nostalgia is a very powerful thing. So the list of movies that have stuck with me just off the basis of nostalgia would be bottomless, it would be endless. So sort of taking nostalgia out of the equation, I have got a list of movies here that did come to mind, and I'm also going to say, guys, I'm not going to be pulling any of these movies off my shelf today, just because pulling them off the shelf, it eliminates, you know, the idea of if something spontaneously pops in my head, it stops me getting up to grab them, and, you know, the video would just be too long. So again, never mind. The first movie that I have here that I wrote down is Lake Mungo. Lake Mungo is up there as one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. Not the number one pick or anything like that, but when I watched Lake Mungo, it was the first movie that had scared me from start to finish in a very, very long time. And I think what makes that even cooler is the movie doesn't really have any jump scares or like, you know, a crazy amount of tension or like heart pounding, like fast-paced moments. It's all atmosphere, and it's all with the story and the creepiness and eeriness that comes along with those things. And watching that movie, like, it just changed like sort of the gears in my head of going like, okay, like this movie is slow, it's taken its time, it's telling a story, it's creating atmosphere, and yet it rattled me this much. So the first one that I have there is Lake Mungo, and again, when the movie was done, I was just thinking about it for ages and ages, and it's a movie that I've seen a handful of times now, and I don't really ever get sick of it. The next movie that I have here is Eden Lake, and this one I've chosen for a different reason, because I honestly think Eden Lake is the most depressing slash disturbing movie that I've ever seen. And when I say that, like, it's not the goriest movie I've ever seen. On the grand scheme of things, like, I think there are more depressing movies and things like that, and disturbing movies and whatever. But just for me, like, watching Eden Lake, it just felt like someone punched me in the gut, threw me on the floor, and then every time I, like, tried to get up again, they just kick me the fuck back down. Like, right when I think moments cannot get worse for our characters, they just go, "You thought you seen it all, hold my beer, I'm about to top it again." And I just find Eden Lake to be so bleak and mean-spirited and nasty, but with all that being said, it's a movie that I really, really like, and I've seen it a couple of times now, but yeah, that's another movie that really stuck with me. Another one that I listed here in my notes is Jordan Peele's Nope. Jordan Peele is one of my favourite modern directors of all time, but in particular, the reason why Nope sort of stuck with me more than Get Out and Us, and I think Get Out is the best of his three, but I think Nope really stuck with me because I really enjoyed the movie and I liked a lot of the commentary and things that it had to say. But I think a lot of people were sort of underwhelmed with the movie, and they're like, okay, so it's just a creature feature, it's a movie about aliens. But to me, it's so much more, and I think that's why it stuck to me. Like, I really enjoyed the messaging and themes and things that it had to say, and I was kind of annoyed that a lot of people were just sort of putting it down as a creature feature or an alien film, which is fine, but I just felt like it was so much more. So when that movie was done, I just felt like I was talking about it for long after that, and I know it's very new on the grand scheme of things, but yeah, a movie that definitely stuck with me. And then the last one that I have to highlight here, just purely off circumstance, is a movie from this year, being Hokum, directed by Damien McCarthy. The reason why I had to put Hokum here is I can probably count every movie that has scared me from start to finish on two hands. So I could, like, it's got to be no more than 10 movies that have genuinely scared me from start to finish. And fear is subjective, and one day I'll probably do a list talking about, like, maybe the top 10 scariest movies I've ever seen or something like that. But to be completely honest with you, Hokum is the scariest movie that I've ever seen. I've watched it twice now. I enjoyed it that much in cinemas. Take the scares and everything out of it, I just enjoy the movie, on a story level and character level and things like that as well. But Hokum is the scariest movie that I've ever seen, and again, it's subjective, so I don't need anyone coming for me in the comments going, like, you're wrong, it's not. Okay, but yeah, that's a movie that stuck with me just purely from that alone. Like, I was terrified watching that movie from start to finish, and yeah, great film. Okay, so getting to the next comment, and this one's actually sort of a two-parter with its questions. The first question that we have here is if I can do a ranking of the Alien franchise. That is definitely something I can do, but I'll save it for a different video, only because if you know my YouTube channel, I actually have a ranking series where I grab franchises or series of films or catalogs of films or something like that, and I rank them from my least favorite to favorite, and I can definitely do the Alien franchise sooner rather than later. The only reason I won't do it here in the update is because I feel like in a full-length video I can make my points on each movie just a little bit more meaty and give you a bit more detail on my thoughts rather than rapid firing them in a Q&A. So that's definitely something I can do in the future. But second half of this comment is, do I have a favorite Funko Pop? Now, the reason why that's being asked, I didn't actually think about this when I set up the camera, but usually you guys can see my horror movie Funko Pops on top of my shelf there in the background. I've just sat the camera a little bit too far forward today, but that's probably the reason why they're asking, or the question's asking, what is my favorite Funko Pop? To be perfectly honest, I do not have a favorite Funko Pop. I've actually said this before. If you ask me, in my eyes, I'm not a Funko Pop collector. Like, I never set out to the shops to go and buy a Funko Pop. It's always just whenever I'm there and one catches my eye, that's when I buy it. So in my mind, I'm not a collector, but I'm probably just in denial. Now, I guess the most simple answer would be like, my Chucky Funko Pops and Freddy Krueger, like the characters that I named before, Art the Clown. Like I have a handful of Art the Clown Funko Pops. I have like 5 or 6 Child's Play Chucky ones, and all of these I'll put on the screen. Like I'll take photos of them up there and edit them on. Like I have Freddy Krueger and things like that. But the Funko Pops that I always gravitate towards are the Funko Pops of characters where you go, how the fuck did this character get a Funko Pop? Like someone down at the headquarters went, do you know a character that nobody is itching for, but we're going to make a mold of them anyway? And you just get these random ass Funko Pops, and it's like, how the fuck did they think to do this character? So I grabbed a few off the shelf that, again, maybe aren't my favorites because I don't feel like I have a favorite. But I just wanted to grab some like real niche ones where it's like, how the fuck did this character get one? So for example, Gordy Verrill from Creepshow. From the segment where Stephen King's character gets covered in like this alien moss that falls from this meteorite. And it's just so crazy. Like I remember seeing this on the shelf and going, what the fuck? Like what timeline are we in where we get a Gordy Verrill Funko Pop? And this one's cool. It's like covered in like a, I don't know, a fabric. Yeah, but really cool. Another one that I came across in the wild. Again, like I never go out hunting these. I just see them and go, what the fuck? We have Vincent Smith from Motel Hell, and it's him with the pig head on and the chainsaw and everything. Again, just Motel Hell, like, at least just growing up in Australia, maybe overseas and everything, the movie has a bit more merit or whatever, but like this is a real niche movie here, and just to see a Vincent Smith from Motel Hell Funko Pop, like that rocked my world. And then like even characters that are parts of franchises, but you just sort of sit there and go, how the fuck? Like this is from the Terrifier series. You understand how Art the Clown has so many Funko Pops and things like that. But seeing Victoria, which she played a bigger role in Terrifier 3, obviously, but it's just like, how the fuck did they go, yep, you know who we really need a Funko Pop right now? Like, we have 20 Art the Clown ones, but let's make a Victoria one. So, again, just like these real niche ones that where you go, how did they decide on this character? They're always the ones that are most appealing to me. Like, it's sort of gotten to the point where, like I said, I think I have like 5 or 6 Chucky Funko Pops, but like if it's between like I have like, you know, some money to spend and I'm like, oh, okay, do I pick another Chucky one or this real niche one from a movie that I don't even love but I just can't believe they did this character? I'll probably go with the more niche one. So again, a little bit of a long-winded answer for this comment, but yeah, they're some of my favorite Funko Pops, just the niche ones. Alright, so getting to the next question, if I was to be one horror character, who would I be? So this question, when I first read it, immediately my mind went to all of my favorite villains that I listed earlier, you know, Freddy, Jason, Chucky, Candyman, you know, whatever. But the more you actually think about it and break it down, it's way less appealing than what you would probably think as just being a horror fan. First of all, major red flag, they're killers. I don't have an itch to scratch by killing people. I think that would be quite obvious. So I'd be very surprised if someone said like Ghostface or something like that. Like that's a major red flag if you want to be a Ghostface killer, because almost nothing is stopping you there. So that's weird. So I really had to like think about it, and like even being those characters, like you got to think about who they actually are. Like Freddy Krueger, burnt to a crisp, probably spending majority of his time in hell. You know, Chucky, he is a human stuck in the body of a doll. Like that's not appealing at all. Who else did I list? Candyman, his backstory is very tragic and sad and brutal. So when you really break it down, it's like, do I want to be a horror villain? No, not really. But if I am playing devil's advocate and like thinking about it, I think Pennywise would be kind of cool. Just like this entity that thrives off fear. Again, the killing and eating human side of it is just not that great and not something that is appealing to me. But I think it's just sort of like fun to be like scaring people. And again, these movies have so much dialogue and so many cool interactions, and just having these interactions where your main goal is to just scare the shit out of people and you can shapeshift and things like that, pretty fucking cool. I think that would be something that would be a lot of fun. One that came to mind because they kind of are an anti-hero is The Crow. Obviously Brandon Lee played the Crow in the first movie and things like that, but again, like this anti-hero, yes, he's dead, but you know, he's sort of stuck in this limbo area, and you know, cool martial arts background and fighting and things like that, so that's kind of cool. A character from a movie that I mentioned earlier, OJ from the movie Nope. Just me, I'm a massive animal fan, and OJ works with horses and trains them and things like that. this ranch that he lives on, I literally can't think of anything just more peaceful and just more just down to earth, just waking up every morning and just going around these ranches and interacting with these horses and things like that. Like, that's really cool to me. But then you might say, okay, you've got this UFO, this alien flying around your ranch. OJ is just so fucking cool in that movie, and he's just so grounded, and he's just prepared to be the hero, and all that in that movie. And I think it would be cool to, you know, see a UFO flying around and things like that. And if I'm as cool as OJ doing it, so be it. And then the last one that came to mind just as I was like sort of wrapping up my answers for this question is Stack from the movie Sinners. Now, if you don't remember the difference between Stack and Smoke and Sinners, Stack is actually the twin brother that does get turned into a vampire. You cannot tell me that the vampires ain't having a whole fucking ton of fun in that movie. Like, they are having a fucking blast, like almost to the point where you're like, Stack's the man, bro. Like, he's out there dancing, fucking singing songs and shit, and then by the end of the movie, like, he's adapted to, you know, the era that he's in now, and he seems to be still having a fucking cool time. And that's also like a big part of the movie, like that last little bit of dialogue at the end of Sinners where he goes like, before all of that went down, like, that was one of the best nights of my life, and they both agree. And like, I just think that's really cool. So I tried to think a little bit out of the box here with these with these answers, but yeah, just the ones off the top of my head. If I'm playing on the dark side a little bit, I'll go Pennywise, the Crow, Stack from Sinners, but like OJ from Nope, I just think he's down to earth, chill. I'd be happy to be that character. Okay, so the next question that we have here is my top 5 or top 10 favourite horror movies. This is actually a question I get so often for obvious reasons, but so much so, I've been on YouTube for that long, I was actually thinking I might as well do a separate video on that sometime in the future, just breaking down probably a top like 50 list or maybe top 30, something like that, just because literally doing a top 5 or top 10, like, I'm just cutting way too many. And again, I feel like this could be a video that is just a bit more beefy, and, you know, I get to talk about more movies and things like that. So technically I will be answering your question, I'll just do it in a future video. But the follow-up on this question is movies that are most important to me as a horror fan. So when I've read the rest of the question and looked at that follow-up talking about horror movies most important to me as a horror fan, I went with ones that like got me into the genre. So first of all, I got to go with Anaconda. Anaconda, I think, is probably my most watched movie of all time, like, regardless of genre. It's either that or Scooby-Doo, to be completely honest. But Anaconda, I rented that one growing up all the time, constantly. I've had it, multiple copies of it on physical media growing up as well. It's just a movie that a lot of people, you know, chalk down as being a creature feature B movie, which it is, but to me it's just so much more. Like, I can watch that movie, like, any mood that I'm in, any day, any time. I almost know that movie's dialogue word for word. Like, it's crazy how many times I've seen Anaconda. You could also say the same thing for Gremlins. It's just a movie I watch pretty much every Christmas, along with Jim Carrey's The Grinch. Like, it's right up there with being one of my all-time favourite Christmas movies, and just one I have a lot of nostalgia with. Again, Child's Play, Chucky, one of my all-time favourite horror icons and horror villains, but Child's Play franchise in particular was very fundamental for me being a horror fan. And I mean, I'll chuck this in the same camp, Nightmare on Elm Street, like that whole franchise, and Freddy Krueger, like we spoke about them a lot earlier, so I'll get through them briefly. But the Child's Play franchise, Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, they're definitely in there as well. And just rounding out, making it 5 of the most important movies to me as a horror fan, I'm going to go with the Blob remake. Again, it's one of my all-time favourite horror movies and stuff, and I feel like the reason why I wanted to put this in, like, most important horror movies to me, like, I don't feel like the first time I saw the Blob I was, like, at an extremely young age or anything like that, but what I do remember about the Blob and why I feel like it was so impactful to me is, like, I remember at that time, like, I just felt like I was in a rut. Being fair, it was a young age, not an extremely young age, but a young age, and it was just crazy to think that I was in a rut, and I just felt like I just wanted to keep seeing more new released movies, like, you know, as in new releases, not going back and exploring back in the past. I just felt like I'd caught as much as I could, and even the movies that I hadn't seen, I'm like, no, I just want to keep seeing new stuff, I want to keep up with the new stuff. And then I went and checked out the Blob, and it just completely flipped a switch, and I'm like, no, I'm cool just catching up on whatever I need to catch up on. And again, I'm talking way back in the past, maybe not like so young as what I was when I was watching Anaconda or Gremlins or Child's Play or something like that, but The Blob, it just did something for me. It just really impacted me. So there we go. Alright, and then the final question that I got here, and it's honestly probably the hardest question to answer out of everything here in the Q&A. What horror movie would be completely different if the characters had a healthy communication with each other? I really don't think there is a specific answer to this, because when you really break it down, like almost every horror movie has a small loophole of like, if these characters just communicated better, nothing here would happen. Like, literally list any horror movie and I feel like that can be an argument for it, but that's just, that's just beating around the bush really. Movies that came to mind for me is movies like, I don't know, Evil Dead, Jeepers Creepers, but then even those ones, it's just kind of like, well, communication's a small part of it. Like, it's just one of those things where it's like all the gears in the machine need to work together to stop something from happening. Communication is just one of them. So I know I haven't really given you a direct answer here. It's probably not a satisfying answer, but there is just so many. Like, I almost feel like the answer is every movie. Like, communication is just such a big part where it's like, as I said, it's almost a plot hole in all of them, where you can be like, okay, if they just communicated here, this wouldn't happen, and because that doesn't happen, then that wouldn't happen, then that wouldn't happen, and then, therefore, none of this movie exists. But then, you kind of want the lack of communication because we love horror movies and we want them to exist. So it's a shit answer, but I actually really liked the question and I put a lot of thought into it, but I just genuinely could not think of a satisfying answer, so there you go. Alright, there we go, guys. Through all of the Q&A questions that I got sent, again, to celebrate hitting the 500 subscriber mark. I did say it wasn't a whole heap of questions, but I do feel like this video has probably even gone on longer than what I expected it to go for. So thank you guys for joining me for today's video. And again, I will reiterate, thank you guys for all the support to getting me to 500 subscribers. And again, I have no intent on slowing down on at least my output of content and things like that, because I just love talking about horror movies, guys. And these questions, again, even though maybe on the grand scheme of things I didn't get a whole ton of questions, but I just had so much fun with every question that I got, and I wanted to put in the effort to answer the questions correctly for you guys. So yeah, thank you for joining me, guys. If you want to see another future Q&A or you guys have questions, let me know in the comments below, guys. But yeah, I appreciate all of yous like way more than what I'm probably conveying here, just because, I don't know, I probably sound a little bit monotone, but I really do appreciate it, guys. And yeah, if you guys are enjoying my content here and maybe you're not subscribed, consider subscribing, because yeah, I have a lot of fun talking about horror and I love interacting with you guys and hearing what you guys also have to say as well. So thank you for joining me, guys, and I'll see you for a future video at some point soon. Laters.